What happens when the boss trades the boardroom for a broom? Disguised as a janitor, a millionaire CEO walks the halls of his own company, unnoticed, unrecognized, and ready to uncover the truth. What he finds? Shocking behavior, hidden struggles, and moments that change everything. This isn't just a social experiment, it's a wake-up call. You won't believe what happens when the mask comes off.
Millionaire pretends to be a janitor in his own company. What he discovers changes everything. From his floor-to-ceiling windows in a gleaming Manhattan skyscraper, Ethan West surveyed the city. He was at the apex of success, West Tech. The tech giant he'd launched from a tiny startup posted record-breaking quarterly profits yet again. The media hailed him as a visionary CEO, self-made, charismatic, unstoppable. But there, in the hush of his plush corner office, Ethan felt an inexplicable void. Papers detailing revenue projections lay across his expansive walnut desk. Any other CEO would relish these figures, but for Ethan, they brought only a muted sense of achievement. Lately, he'd been mired in restlessness, as if the spark that once powered his ambition had dulled to a mere flicker. Something was off, but he couldn't pinpoint what. A polite knock sounded, and in walked Grace Walker, his personal assistant of 8 years. Immaculate as always in a pencil skirt and carrying a clipboard, she rattled off his schedule: board meeting at 10, lunch with investors at noon, a quick chat with HR in the afternoon. "Everything all right, Mr. West?" she asked, noticing his drawn expression. Ethan held up a report titled "Employee Morale at an All-Time Low" with a damning pie chart. Nearly half of West Texas staff felt undervalued and unheard. Beneath the chart, comments ranged from mild frustration to downright despair. He set the pages down and looked at Grace. "How could I be so successful, yet so disconnected from our own people?" Grace hesitated. "Maybe it's not that you missed it, Mr. West, but that it's hard to see clearly from up here." She gestured to the lavish office. Her tone wasn't accusatory, just factual. "Sometimes you need a different vantage point." It was this seed of an idea, a different vantage point, that would soon transform everything. Ethan decided to investigate the reality beneath the polished veneer. He recalled hearing about bosses who disguised themselves to observe their companies at ground level. Maybe that was what he needed. Realizing there was no simple fix, he told Grace to postpone the HR discussion. A plan was forming in his mind, one that was at once audacious and risky. Later that day, Ethan left the office in his black SUV, heading home through New York's congested streets. They halted at a red light, and he noticed a janitorial worker pushing a cleaning cart across the intersection. Something about that image hit him. Did he even know the janitors in his own building? Did he ever consider them, except when signing off budgets? His phone pinged with an email from HR titled "Anonymous Employee Feedback." The compilation ranged from complaints about toxic management to stories of feeling utterly invisible. One comment read, "The CEO hasn't spoken to us for years. Does he even care we exist?" Another condemned how the janitorial staff received no recognition, forced to work late without extra pay. A subtle anger brewed inside him, anger at himself for allowing a culture that marginalized his own staff. An idea now took firm root. He would temporarily step down from his public CEO role and enter Westtech, not as Mr. West, the self-made millionaire, but as James, a humble janitor. Only then could he see the truth behind the superficial charts. Returning to his penthouse that evening, Ethan felt an excitement he hadn't experienced in years. Yet the risk was evident. He might appear foolish if discovered, or he might shake confidence in his leadership. But something deeper nudged him forward, an intuition that success was hollow if the foundation was cracked. Picking up his phone, he called Grace to his home the next day. She listened in shock as he explained the plan. "A janitor?" she repeated, brows furrowed. "Mr. West, are you sure?" Ethan smiled. I need to see what it's like for the people who keep this place running. And I can't do it from an ivory tower. Grace gave a curt nod, though her eyes shone with concern. I'll arrange the details, but be careful. This could backfire. Ethan shrugged. It might, but I have to try. Early the next morning, Ethan slipped into West Tech through a seldom-used side entrance. Gone were the tailored suits, replaced by a second-hand blue uniform, scuffed sneakers, and a cheap ID badge reading James. Instead of high-flying greetings, he entered a cramped storage room reeking of bleach and industrial soap. Mops, buckets, and shelves of cleaning chemicals lined the walls. This was the nerve center of the janitorial staff, his new vantage point. He hardly had time to adjust when a gruff voice spoke behind him. "You the new hire?" Turning, Ethan saw a wiry older man with graying hair peeking from under a faded baseball cap. His uniform bore a patch reading Tom. Tom eyed the newcomer's posture and calloused hands lacking, looking skeptical. "I'm Tom. Been here since half these desks were in boxes." Ethan mustered a smile, forcing an uncertain handshake. Hi, I'm James. Guess I'm your rookie." Tom snorted lightly. "Better get used to it, kid." Bathrooms, hallways, conference rooms, the usual. You got a question, you come to me. But watch out, management doesn't like seeing us loitering. The irony stung Ethan. He'd never realized his own managers disliked the sight of janitors simply being around. Still, he nodded, accepting the bucket and mop from Tom. That first day battered Ethan physically. He scrubbed toilets, dragged trash bags, and wiped floors until his arms ached, all in silence. Yet as taxing as it was, the sense of raw honesty grabbed him. The corners of West Tech he once breezed by on the executive floor now revealed a different existence. He overheard breakroom gripes, pressure to meet unrealistic deadlines, disappointment in leadership, bitterness at pay stagnation. At lunch, Ethan noticed a petite woman with weary eyes but a kind smile approaching the front desk. When the receptionist greeted her as Sophia, Ethan's ears perked up. She exuded a gentle warmth that contrasted sharply with others' guarded cynicism. Moments later, a burly manager in a pristine suit, the infamous Roger Steele, cornered Sophia, demanding she come to his office. Ethan had to hold back the urge to intervene. This was not his place, not yet. Over the next days, Ethan gleaned insights into widespread unrest. While scrubbing floors in the break room, he overheard employees complaining about endless cost-cutting measures. "We're stuck with extra shifts. No pay raise in years," one muttered. Another retorted, "If Mr. West paid attention, maybe we wouldn't be scraping by." The words bit into Ethan like barbs. He had signed off on these budget cuts, trusting his executives' recommendations. Had he become so absorbed in profit and growth that he lost sight of the toll on human beings? With each confession he overheard, he felt his regret deepen. He soon realized Tom was a wellspring of knowledge. The older janitor told him West Tech used to feel like family. "Years ago, people said hi to me by name," Tom recalled as they cleaned a storeroom. "We had an actual sense of belonging. Now, to them, we're invisible." In a hushed tone, Tom confided in Ethan that HR once looked out for employees but was effectively under the thumb of certain managers. Ethan listened grimly, taking mental notes. One evening, while emptying trash on an upper floor, Ethan discovered an abandoned folder on a conference table. Inside were recent memos about streamlining operational costs, effectively slashing janitorial budgets and frontline wages to boost efficiency. He recognized the signatures: Daniel, his coup, and a few department heads, including the dreaded Roger. The dryness in Ethan's mouth reflected the guilt sinking in his gut. His decisions, made from high above, had painful consequences for the rank and file. Bit by bit, Ethan observed that Roger Steele exercised outsized power. He saw Roger berate staff in hallways, forcibly reminding them they were replaceable. One afternoon, after finishing a corridor, Ethan encountered Roger scolding Sophia by the reception area. She looked near tears, clutching a stack of files. Roger's voice was low but threatening, referencing how she'd better comply or face consequences. Something in Ethan snapped. Summoning courage, Ethan managed to say, "Excuse me, sir. She looks upset, maybe cut her some slack." Roger whipped around, eyes blazing. "You're just a janitor. Keep your mouth shut." The words hammered Ethan's pride, but he forced himself to remain outwardly calm, reminding himself of the role he played. Once Roger left, Ethan gently asked Sophia if she was okay. Blinking back tears, she whispered, "No, but I can't afford to lose this job." The encounter hardened Ethan's resolve. For too long, people like Roger had run amok. He needed a plan to root out this rot, but first, he required hard evidence. After hours, Ethan crept into a cluttered storage room near the executive offices. Amid boxes and filing cabinets, he rummaged for anything revealing. Many files were routine, but one labeled confidential internal reports jolted him. He found a string of staff complaints, from harassment to missing overtime pay. Each was stamped resolved in red, yet notes clarified no real resolution had occurred. Instead, employees were often transferred or silently forced out. At the folder's bottom lay a memo from Daniel: "We must limit negative exposure. If staff complain, keep it contained and avoid escalation. Profitability is top priority." Ethan's heart sank. Daniel, once a friend and trusted lieutenant, was condoning cruelty. This was a betrayal on multiple levels. He took photos with his phone, hands trembling with rage and sorrow. Another night, Ethan eavesdropped near the loading dock and heard employees whisper about the coup skimming budgets. They mentioned how Roger and Daniel threatened staff into silence. The puzzle was becoming clearer. Daniel and Roger were effectively bulldozing morale for short-term gains, while Ethan remained oblivious at the top, but not anymore. Fueled by shock, Ethan began systematically gathering documents, emails, anything tying Roger or Daniel to unethical schemes. He discovered expense reports Roger had falsely labeled as client events, paying for personal luxuries. Even more galling was how Daniel's signature frequently appeared, hinting complicity. The more he uncovered, the more he realized how thoroughly the upper echelons had concealed their misconduct under Westtech's success. Throughout his day job, Ethan stoically kept scrubbing floors, but inside he was boiling. During one break, Tom noticed his tension. "You're not as quiet as you were, kid," Tom remarked, sipping from a chipped coffee mug. "Something on your mind?" Ethan only nodded. "Just thinking about how to fix what's broken," he said vaguely. Tom chuckled. "Best watch yourself, this place eats idealists for breakfast." Yet Tom's eyes shone with a flicker of hope for the first time. The longer Ethan spent as James, the more personal this became. It wasn't just about halting abuse, it was about redeeming a company he loved. Armed with a trove of evidence, Ethan knew confrontation was inevitable. He planned carefully. Grace, fully in the loop, arranged a confidential executive gathering. She looked uneasy. "You're sure about this?" Ethan nodded. "It has to be done." On that day, Ethan still wore his janitorial uniform. He quietly followed Roger into a corridor after a high-level meeting. Mustering courage, he handed Roger a folder, brimming with incriminating documents, personal expenses disguised, complaint cover-ups. Roger's face blanched. "Where did you get this?" he spat, voice trembling. Ethan only responded, "I've been paying attention. Roger threatened him. No one will believe a janitor." But Ethan smirked. "We'll see." Then Ethan marched to Daniel's office. The coup seemed annoyed by the lowly presence of a janitor. Without ceremony, Ethan handed him a second folder, listing Daniel's involvement in burying staff complaints and endorsing unfair policies. Daniel's usually calm demeanor fractured. "You have no clue who you're dealing with," he growled. "I think I do," Ethan replied, quietly adding, "and so will others soon enough." Late that afternoon, Ethan asked Grace to summon Daniel, Roger, and other senior managers to the main conference room, a space walled by glass that ironically symbolized the transparency Westtech claimed. They gathered around the sleek table, perplexed by the presence of a janitor. Then Ethan stepped to the head, chest tight with adrenaline. "I called this meeting because things are going to change," Ethan said. Roger rolled his eyes. "This is absurd." "We have no time for," but Ethan cut him off. Voice calm but firm, "I've spent weeks undercover in my own company." As a janitor, the room fell silent. Daniel went pale. Roger's expression oscillated between fury and fear. "I've seen the way employees are treated," Ethan continued. "I've read every complaint you tried to bury, every unethical budget cut you twisted for personal gain. I built Westtech to uplift people, not crush them." He opened his backpack, distributing printed evidence, emails, memos, expense reports. It was damning. He singled out Roger. "Your abuse of subordinates, your fake expense claims it ends now. You're fired effective immediately." Roger leapt up, sputtering. "You can't do that." Ethan's gaze was cold. "I can. This is my company." Grace signaled security, who escorted a raging Roger out. Daniel, though trying to maintain composure, seemed clearly unnerved. Having exposed them, Ethan declared the old regime was over. Some managers in the room looked aghast. Others looked relieved. The day ended in chaos, but a heavy weight lifted from Ethan's shoulders. He had taken the crucial first step. The next morning, Ethan arrived, dressed not as a janitor, but in one of his tailored suits, feeling both anxious and resolute. Word had spread fast. CEO goes undercover, fires corrupt managers. Rumors buzzed. Grace helped organize an all-hands meeting in the main lobby. Dozens of employees, secretaries, programmers, custodians crammed in. For many, it was the first time seeing Ethan West in person. Standing on the central staircase, Ethan faced them, heart pounding. He spoke with unvarnished honesty. "For the past few weeks, I've lived among you as James, cleaning floors, emptying trash. I discovered the real Westtech, beyond the glossy reports. Many of you felt unheard, mistreated, or just plain invisible. I've learned we can't keep chasing profit while neglecting the people who make everything possible." A hush fell. Some employees wore expressions of shock, others a cautious hope. "I've taken immediate action," Ethan continued. "Roger Steele is dismissed, and the leadership that betrayed your trust will be held accountable. But this is just the start." He paused, scanning the crowd. "Our culture must change. We'll revisit pay structures, reopen HR complaints, and create an advisory council to ensure your voices matter. If we truly want success, we can't build it on broken spirits." A ripple of applause built into a roar. Tears glistened on a few faces. Ethan saw Sophia near the front, wiping her eyes, her relief palpable. He nodded at her, silently promising more to come. Later, Ethan spotted Sophia packing up her desk. She looked simultaneously elated and overwhelmed. Approaching her, he said gently, "Sophia, I'm sorry for everything you endured. I should have been more attentive." She shook her head, voice trembling. "I never imagined you'd do something like become a janitor just to see us." "Thank you." Smiling, he informed her, "We're reorganizing your department. With Roger gone, we need someone who understands empathy. We'd like you to help lead that transition." Tears formed in her eyes. "I'd be honored." The relief in her posture was like a heavy weight lifted. Ethan next went to find Tom, the veteran janitor. He discovered him methodically cleaning a hallway corner. Tom glanced up with a knowing grin. "Didn't expect to see you in a suit, James." Ethan laughed. I guess I'm done pretending. He clapped a hand on Tom's shoulder. I want you on a new employee advisory council. I need your perspective, someone who sees everything and doesn't sugarcoat. Tom's eyes flickered with pride. Never thought I'd see the day. Count me in. Of course, not every problem vanished overnight. Daniel still occupied the coup role. He'd come to rely on cunning tactics for short-term financial gain, ignoring morale in the process. Ethan confronted him privately with the evidence. You betrayed the values we once shared, Ethan said, voice tinged with sadness. Daniel tried to justify, all I did was protect profitability. But Ethan was firm. Profit at the expense of our people isn't real success. I'm giving you two choices, either help rebuild West Tech from scratch, abiding by our original ideals, or resign. Daniel stared at the floor, speechless. For now, he stayed, though with the stern warning that a single misstep would lead to immediate termination. The board also demanded Daniel correct the misguided policies he'd let flourish. In the following weeks, West Tech began an overhaul. Ethan personally reopened old HR cases that had been stamped resolved but never truly addressed. Employees with outstanding pay grievances were compensated properly. Abusive managers faced consequences or were replaced. Salary structures for lower-level staff, including janitors, were revised upward. The mood in the building changed noticeably. People who once walked on eggshells now dared to voice suggestions. The newly formed employee council, where Tom had a seat, met monthly with Ethan and HR to discuss real issues. Sophia took on a leadership role in her department, ensuring transparency and fairness. For the first time, communication wasn't just a buzzword, yet none of this was easy. Multiple managers complained about the sudden softening of rules. Investors worried about short-term costs. But Ethan, resolute, insisted a stable, motivated workforce would pay dividends in the long run. If our employees thrive, so does West Tech, he told them. Privately, he continued traveling the building floors, chatting with staff in hallways, dropping by the cafeteria unannounced. Some employees giggled, recalling that not long ago he wore the same uniform they did. Others used these chats to share concerns openly, something unthinkable before. He discovered that re-establishing trust required consistent presence and listening, not just an edict from up high. One evening, after a grueling day of back-to-back meetings, Ethan stood alone in the panoramic corner office that had once felt so isolating. Now it felt charged with renewed purpose. The city glittered below like a promise. He recalled the words Tom had once said, "You'd be surprised what you can learn when folks think you're invisible." Going undercover as a janitor had offered him more than raw data about corrupt practices. It had rekindled empathy and reminded him why he'd founded West Tech in the first place, to innovate while lifting people up, not trampling them. He also realized how easily a culture sours if leaders become disconnected. Grace quietly entered, carrying a small stack of papers. "Another batch of new HR proposals," she said with a slight smile. "It's amazing how quickly things are changing," he nodded. "Indeed, and we're only at the beginning." She studied him, her expression sincere. "It's good to see you like this, Mr. West, driven by more than profits." Ethan gave a grateful nod. "Thank you, Grace, for backing me from day one on this crazy plan. Without your help, I'd still be blinded up here." She simply smiled. "I believed in your vision. Besides, you had to see for yourself, right?"